On today's Rebel's Edge, another bullish signal hit the tape. We'll tell you all what it means for the balance of August trading. Our unusual options activity service delivers again with bullish call buying activity back in July on the Hawaiian Airlines merger with Alaska. And just when you thought it was safe to go back to school, monkeypox is at it again. We're going to tell you which stocks are going to benefit from the latest health scare. All that and more on today's Rebel's Edge.
All right. Here we go again. My man with the great cold open. Woof, boy, I'll tell you what, I'm excited just listening to you talk about what we've got in front of us for today. It's pretty awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, I like doing it, trying to make a habit of bringing the thunder and the cold opens. I think it hopefully keeps people watching. Now we just have to live up to the hype, Pete, which I know we can do.
Yep. And last thing I'll say is last night I was out there. We talked about it just now before we came on. But let me tell you, Def Leppard, they are still the real deal. That was awesome last night. Absolutely blew me away how good they were. And they saved the best for last, and they crushed it, man. And there was about 45,000 people at Target Field, and these guys actually threw on some Twins jerseys and strolling around. It was awesome. They were great, and it was really a lot of fun, Mark. So I wish you would have been here last night. You'd have been with me.
The invitation must have gotten lost in the email. I think it went to my spam.
Well, you know what? There's only so much room behind the scenes back there. So, it was true. Fun. But let me tell you, it was a late night, a very, very, very late night. But I'm recovering pretty well, but you could probably hear it in my voice. All right. We're going to jump to the macro minute, Mark. I'm going to kick it off with this. Yesterday, we talked about it. Today, we're going to talk about it. We'll probably talk about it all throughout the rest of the week. But Jackson Hole, that is the focus. The boondoggle that is the Fed meeting and fishing with Steve Leisman and all the things that go on. It's going to be exciting, but I think we're going to hear from some of the folks that really want to have their names in print, and they're going to give us something that'll be very interesting for the markets. That's kind of where I'm leaning right now for me.
Well, I don't know if we're going to hear much of anything until Jay Powell himself takes the stage on Friday, right? That's the big event at Jackson Hole. And I think you're going to hear a cautiously dovish tone. He does not want the market to think that he's going to go down 50 on the September meeting, mid-September, when, of course, the Fed's going to make that decision. I think he's going to be putting traders in an expectation mode for a 25 basis point hike. And hey, I'll take it. My macro minute, Pete, I teased this in the cold open. The 40-day trading index, something that we don't look at that often, but it's something that I do tend to look at every now and then when we're looking for some shorter-term indication, is indicating that stocks are actually fairly oversold last week. It was actually a 10-to-1 ratio day, which is pretty rare in the index. Got a lot of people saying that might mean that the bulls will remain in charge through the end of August. So that was my macro minute.
I like it. And I like hearing what you said. And by the way, everybody suddenly jumped on this bandwagon of, well, maybe they're going to do 50. I'm with you. I consistently will say, Jay Powell, he's been very clear. He's been concise. He gives us what we need to hear, and sometimes too much, but oftentimes he gives us and he delivers. And I think he's going to stick with a quarter, but that quarter is coming. By the way, next up is Fantastic Futures. I'm going to hit gold. Gold is absolutely just on this ferocious move to the upside. It continues to be on this move, and it probably will until we get into that September and we start feeling things out a little bit for what's going on with the Fed. Coffee is another one. John and I were just talking about that yesterday. It's up 32% year to date. That's been an incredible move. It is right there on this level where it's around 250. If it can get through there, Mark, maybe there's a little bit more height, and I would actually read through and say that might not be so great for Starbucks. We'll see.
No, it wouldn't. They're certainly for Starbucks customers because they're just going to pass that cost along, and your triple half-calf mocha latte is going to cost you 29 cents more or whatever the heck the increase is going to be. But, yeah, that 250 handle does appear to be a support resistance level. So if it breaks through 250, I think it could see further upside momentum.
All right. I love the pace that we're at right now, man. So let's hit it. Let's hit one of our first of the four, AMD. And the reason we wanted to bring this one up, Mark, is we were talking about this yesterday, John and I, and we were going through the fact that they've made this big acquisition, gets them more competitive with NVIDIA and others in the AI space. And, $5 billion, that's a decent chunk of change. But what we also pointed out was something that we don't oftentimes do because the opportunities are not always there, but unusual option activity that hit yesterday. And we did talk about that. And we talked about the size of this trade. So yesterday, what did they do? They bought 12,000 of this Friday's expiration, the 157.5 calls. And lo and behold, they paid about a call at $1.50. Today, they decided they're going to sell some of those things out, Mark. Why not sell them and roll them? That's the smartest thing I could see. They did exactly that. They took more than $2 out of this trade and put another $1 back in there at the 165s today. So day two, we're not going to promise this is going to happen all the time, but day two of unusual option activity and what it looks like at Market Rebellion.
Yeah, and doing it live and 12,000 lot, that is a massive, massive trade, obviously on that acquisition news that you mentioned yesterday. But that's right, Pete. That's what the folks that are subscribed to our services or usual options activity services get. And just quick shameless plug, if you like live trading and calls like that, you got to be at our Rebel Mastermind event October 11th. That's in Aventura, Florida, North Miami, for those of you that are playing the home game. If there are tickets available because they are selling fast, you can scan that QR code. You can call our sales desk and they can hook you up. We only got 100 slots, and I think most of them are already gone. So people better jump on that Rebel Mastermind. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that should be great. All right, we're going to move on to Amer Sports. Now, this is not a name that most people are very familiar with, including myself, but I know a little bit about them, and I know a lot more about them now. The fact that their profits were up 16%, Mark. That's a huge number. They raised the 2025. They raised the guidance. That's another thing. Check mark. That's another really good thing. Stock up about 12, 13% today, having a really good start to the day right out of the gate. But when you look at all the various numbers, their tech apparel, that was up 34%. Their gross margins, 55.8%. Across every metric that you could look at, and we've seen more and more of this through this earnings season where they're crushing it out there. So, it kind of makes you feel like, well, where really are we if they're doing that well and so many different companies are doing that well and we haven't seen too many misses out there. We've seen some for sure, but not too many. It just shows you this has been a really powerful earnings season, and this name is absolutely rocketing up 12, 13% today. Not so bad.
Yeah, all A's on this report card, certainly, Pete. And I think this is a lot of the reason why a lot of the trader talk is that we are looking at a soft landing, coming out of this interest rate cycle. It's the kind of thing that kind of gave people a reason to say, well, maybe the Fed will do 50. Yeah, maybe the Fed won't do 50. But what's really interesting to me about this is what it says about consumers and specialty retail spending. This is something that we've been talking about a lot all through the summer, even out of last earnings season, where we saw all of those surprise in last round of earnings on the shoe companies like On Holdings. That's a company that's continued to do really well. That stock's been up over the past few days, if I remember correctly. So folks, notwithstanding that prices remain elevated, people are willing to spend on stuff that they really love. This is a company that makes stick and ball, racket and ball, I think they call it, sporting goods, also in that category, specialty footwear and shoes. So the shoe party keeps going, specialty retail keeps going, and I think that's part of why we're seeing these kind of earnings out of this company.
Well, and next up, we're looking at Hawaiian Airlines. This whole thing with Alaska, it's been going on, Mark. It feels like this thing's been going on for a long time, and it feels that way because it has been. But it's a review period right now and, waiting for approval, all of that in front of us. Hawaiian Airlines definitely getting a nice big boost today, up 12%. That's a really nice move for this name. We'll see how this whole thing plays out. It's still not completely done. There's still, since the deadline, which was August 5th, they just kind of keep extending this out. But certainly it looks like things are starting to get into place. I'm not saying it's a done deal, but it's getting pretty dang close, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, there's certainly a lot of traders out there that think that it is, although this DOJ has not been particularly kind to airline mergers so far this year, certainly during the course of the Biden administration, as we all know. But this is another one, Pete. I mean, we had some pretty interesting and pretty heavy bullish call buying activity in July. You'll see there, producer Jared putting that print up. The first one on the 9th of July, and the next one on, I believe, the 18th of July. Print's getting a little small. I might need to up my prescription here. But again, the power of unusual options activity. Folks jumped in on that, got paid very, very well. Stock doing great today. I think that the Justice Department's going to let this one sneak by. And I've been pretty good lately on my big picture calls with the Mars Kellogg call that we made at the end of July. That one turned out to be correct as well. Hope some folks that watched backed up the truck and got some cashish on that one. But yeah, I think this one's going to go through as well.
Yeah, that was great. And I think we were smart enough to give you a lot of credit. You and I were talking about that day. We were on together, and that was a monster move by Mars. I mean, Mars was landing.
Yes,
anyway,
Mars attacked.
Yeah.
Mars attacked in a good way.
Yep. GeoVax Labs. That one's up next. Now, this one's interesting because it had a really good spike. Well, now they're getting a little bit of a pullback, and maybe for some of the right reasons, I guess. Was it a little bit too much, too fast? Maybe. But you were talking about this, that what do they do? Well, they develop immunotherapies. They have vaccines, all the rest of it. You brought it up earlier. Monkeypox. Oh, my goodness. Are you kidding me? Monkeypox again? We got to hear about this. But yes, and it could be pretty disruptive, folks. I mean, this is something that we're not going to take lightly. I joke about it a little bit, but I really don't. But there's a whole lot going on behind the scenes here, Mark. What do you think about this one? It had that big jump. It's pulled back significantly, probably for the right reasons, given some of the numbers that are out there. But is this a name that's touchable, or a name where it's like, all right, we've taken a nice look, we can back off, there's other opportunities out there?
Yeah, I wouldn't be buying this name, and it's come off of its rally for one simple reason, is that they sold a pretty big lot of stock to an undisclosed institutional investor, 1.7 million shares at a $5 handle on the stock. So what happens when that kind of a deal's announced? The stock tends to come down, right, to where that price. The market says, well, if that's what they're willing to buy, 1.5 million or 1.7 million shares at that price, then that should be the price. So that's basically what happened here. No surprise. And yeah, look, why this stuff seems, you gotta ask yourself, remember the things that make you go, from the 90s? You got to ask yourself why this stuff comes back right around back to school season, like every single year. I mean, I don't know. I don't have my tinfoil hat out, but I might get the aluminum foil from the drawer and get started on that one. That's a little bit of a strange one to me.
You're saying it's not a coincidence?
I'm saying it's just, it just could be something other than a coincidence.
Yeah. All right, we got some sports, Mark. I know you want to kick it off. What do you think about what's going on in the NFL? Tell me a little bit about the NFL quarterbacks there. Ask me whatever you want.
Well, so listen, as viewers know, I like to be the Howard Cosell to Pete. I don't know what the other side of it would be, but I like to ask the questions of the expert as opposed to try to be the expert myself, because most of what I know about sports I get from my daughter, if it's not from Pete, of course. But the rookie quarterback roster, this is what I want to talk about today. The rookie quarterback roster, is it a strong lineup as compared to previous years? Is there a comparison? I heard somebody say, or I read something quickly on one of the blogs, that it looks similar in certain ways to the 1983 lineup. I don't want to, give people what my age is, because of course that's not relevant, and I'm going to be 30 forever. But 1983, what's the deal there, Pete? Are there any comparison?
Yes, there are great comparisons. That was a monster year. It's the reference that everybody uses as probably the best quarterback year ever.
Wow. I'm
here to tell you that it was unbelievable. It might be matched. And I say that because if you take a look at 1983, here's who was in the draft, and people will know these names. You don't have to be that old to know these names. John Elway, he's in the Hall of Fame, won a couple of Super Bowls. Todd Blackledge, pretty damn good quarterback out of Penn State. Jim Kelly, well, he's up there in Buffalo for a long time. He's a Hall of Famer. Tony Eason. We used to call him Champagne Tony Eason when he went to the Rose Bowl. He did go to a Super Bowl, by the way, did not win. Ken O'Brien, who was around forever, it felt like. Dan Marino, another Hall of Famer. So that's a damn good class, right? 1983. Here's what we've got this year, though. Caleb Williams, he's already slated. He's the starter. Jaden Daniels is now slated. He's the starter. You've got Drake May, Patriots. He's going to be the starter. Penix, who's going to be competing with Kirk Cousins. Now, when I say that, he's not going to beat out Kirk Cousins necessarily, but is Cousins' ankle good enough? Is that Achilles good enough to be able to get out there? And if so, is he just a play away from being injured and all of a sudden Penix is in? Penix looks great, by the way. He has looked really, really good. And so he's another one. J.J. McCarthy, he's not going to play the rest of this year. He had an injury, unfortunately, with the Minnesota Vikings, but he looked great, Mark. So I've given you a lot of greats. Bo Nix, I'll give you the last one. And I think Bo Nix might be one of the best of all of them, out of Oregon, plays for Denver. The head coach named him the starter now for the season as well. These guys are stepping in and ready to play. And a lot of these guys aren't 21 years old, Mark. A lot of these quarterbacks are coming in because of COVID and a lot of other things that were going on. They played 6-7 years of college football. They're 24 and 25 years old, some of these guys.
Crazy. It's such a crazy dynamic what
it is. It's crazy. But all that being said, I would say this one stacks up pretty daggone good. Now, not one of these guys has played in a real game yet in their entire pro career, but I think you can go out on a little bit of a limb and say that's a damn good draft class that actually could end up looking and maybe even surpassing the 1983. 1983 was big. That was a monster. I was an 85 graduate, played in 86 my first year in the NFL, so I'm a little bit younger than those guys, but great players.
Yeah, so folks, if you'd like Pete to do the next Rebel's Edge wearing his 1983 hair and parachute pants and everything from that era, send in your cards and letters. We'll see if we can make that happen. Last thing I got for you on sports before we got to wrap, Pete. College playoffs, football playoffs. Any sleepers that you think are going to make in, speak to the final round?
I think that's the most fun part of it. We know how great Ohio State is, right? We always know of Alabama and Georgia. Georgia's number one in the country ranking as of right now. You've got the Oklahomas of the world, Texas. You've got Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, all the usual suspects, right? They're all lined up. But I thought it would be fun just to say, you know what? Not everybody is going to make it, and some folks might slide in there with a good year. I'm going to take two of them out there right now. I'm going to say Iowa gets in there. Iowa is so well coached. Every year they have one of the top. They're top five in just about every category defensively. Their biggest problem is offensively. They have a hard time, getting enough points on the board. But this is a Kirk Ferentz team that year in and year out wins 10 games. They get somewhere pretty far, but with this new structure, I think that team walks right into the playoffs. I think they do very well. In the West, which is no longer necessarily the West, but the Western part of the Big Ten, still a little bit weaker maybe than I think the Eastern side of the Big Ten. So I think that might play in their favor. They play a lot of the Western style teams. Anyway, that being said, Oklahoma State's another one. They've got their quarterback. Last year threw too many interceptions, didn't throw enough touchdowns, and he threw too many interceptions, but he's a heck of a quarterback. But they got a guy named Ollie Garden. Now, this guy is absolutely a killer. He's a 6'2", 225-pound guy, running back, who is the best running back right now, I think, in all of college football. But he's down there at Oklahoma State. I think Oklahoma State is going to surprise a lot of people, not just in the Big 12, but this is one of those teams where I think Oklahoma's no longer there. Texas is no longer there. I think Oklahoma State, they've got a lot of new schools coming in. I think that they can make a run at this thing and get 10 games themselves. Bowman, the quarterback, is good enough, and if he doesn't throw too many picks, that's a team that could be pretty scary and a nice sleeper into that playoff.
Man, I love it. Not just market intel, options trades, macro, but the kind of sports information we get. I was taking a lot of mental notes for my fantasy football lineup. Pete, amazing as always. I'm going to wrap it, if you don't mind, with a couple shameless plugs.
Yep.
Thanks as always, folks, for joining us for the Rebel's Edge. We will be back, of course, tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern time. But in the meantime, go to our website, marketrebellion.com. You'll see a little pop-up banner there for the Mastermind. That's that October 11th live trading event. We are going to be trading during market hours, demonstrating 4 of our core and most successful strategies that made Pete and John famous. A lot of special guests coming, Grant Cardone, Tom Lee, a number of others to be announced. VIPs are going to be joining us for a special evening yacht cruise where we're going to show them the beautiful Miami skyline. This is a not to miss event. Of course, also want to remind folks, check out the Rebel Setup. That's our 8 to 9 a.m. live pre-market futures show with the great Steve Kalasian. Sign up for the Rebel Roundup. That's our daily newsletter. Comes out 5 days a week after the close, as well as the weekend update on Saturday that comes out with our great editor, Justin Nugent. So many incredible things going on at Market Rebellion. Thank you again for watching The Rebel's Edge. We'll see you tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Trade smarter.